Hello, everybody. This is Frances Reaves, president of Parent Your Parents. And today I have the honor of having Andrew Bellinson with us. And
Thank you.
I, I met Andrew, and this explains why you have to go out and meet people. I met Andrew at a networking up in North Miami, and I was looking for someone who would do, it's called veterans aid and attendance. But I was looking for someone who would do veterans aid and attendance work. And I met Andrew briefly and he said, yes, no, I do that. So I called him and uh, and I kept calling him because I kept getting in trouble and Andrew would get me out of them. So Andrew is from Bellinson Law Firm. He specializes in vets aid and attendance and Medicaid law.
And getting Frances out of criminal trouble.
And getting me out of criminal
Not
trouble.
criminal.
That is so, he's still doing it, I might add. So, Andrew, first of all, why don't you tell us what vets aid and attendance is? So many people don't know.
Okay, so it's a great benefit.
It is
for veterans, particularly for the veterans who served during active wartime. So typically my clients are, because I'm dealing with elderly people, it's for veterans of World War II, Korea, Vietnam. If they served, even if they didn't go to those active war zones, they're allowed to get this benefit. And what the benefit does for most of our clients is it will pay cash to a veteran or a widow of a veteran who needs home health aides, who needs to go into an assisted living facility. It'll pay them, for the widow, $1,248 a month that they can use towards those expenses. And for the veteran, I believe it's $1,872
Right.
per month. That's really significant when you're living off of Social Security or a small pension and social.
Well, in fact, my father took advantage of that. He had served in World War II in the Pacific arena, and he received close to a little over $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that and his Social Security, we were able to put him in a lovely assisted living center. And
Exactly.
it was really, it was a lifesaver.
Absolutely.
For Dad, actually.
Yeah.
And a lot of widows don't know about it.
That's right.
And
a lot of people don't know about it. A
Right.
lot of vets don't know about it. And I came across it from my father, who bravely served in Germany during the Korean War. But he still qualified. We didn't know that this even existed. I wasn't practicing this area of law at the time. And somebody at the hospital told me about it. And I was like, oh my God, my dad never applied for any veterans benefits. And they said, it's available, go get it. It's perfect for what your dad needs. And again, you're right. It was a lifesaver.
It was a lifesaver. No, those things always are. And also, Andrew, whenever I bring up Medicaid to clients, they immediately think, I'm not that poor. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm not that poor. And it's true, they're not.
Right.
Medicaid there are two things that I tell people about Medicaid. You don't have to be 65. You can be 2 years old. And if you qualify, you can be a Medicaid recipient.
Right.
Nor do you have to be poor. You simply have to appear poor. Would that be the way to say that?
Well, I think you have to fit in within the criteria. It's kind of like what I do for people is I help them fit within the criteria of Medicaid and of the VA benefits, the standards that are put into place by those agencies. So what we do, it's kind of like working with your accountant on your taxes. You wanna put everything in the proper place so that you can get the most benefits. And with both the VA and with Medicaid, everything we do to qualify somebody, we show them. We show the agencies what we've done. It's not that we're hiding it. And so it's the opposite. It just needs to be done in the proper way, like you're with your accountant. So we're not out there committing fraud. We're not out there hiding millions of dollars of assets. We're doing what's appropriate. What everybody deserves. If you fit into these programs, they're there for you. You should investigate them. Not every person who comes to me ends up being a client. Sometimes I tell them it's not worth it. There's issues with what we have to do, and it's a case-by-case situation, as you know. I mean, in doing what you know, or what you do.
Well, I will say one thing I love about what you do and the whole Medicaid apparatus is that it really does save people's lives. I mean, I've seen it just with my clients. I mean, it was dire, and now it's not that it's necessarily the best, but it's so much better than it was. Can you give us just an example?
Right. So there's an analogy that we always use that I talk about about the sandwich generation. That's what we're in. I have teenage kids. I had my parents have passed away, but I had adult parents and elderly parents, and I was in the middle. And of course, my kids always need money. My parents at one point needed money for me to help pay for their care, and I'm in the middle. I'm getting squeezed like that peanut butter and jelly getting squeezed right out, because it's hard to come up with an extra $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 a month to pay for a home health aides or to pay for skilled nursing facility. So our benefits come in there and they relieve that. So I've had people who they were receiving Social Security as their income. They're getting $1,500 or $2,000 a month. And all of a sudden they're hit with the obligation of they need to put somebody in their home with them to take care of them at least a few hours a day, or they're being told that they're not safe at home. They need to go to an assisted living facility. That's $3,000 a month. And they only have $2,000 a month. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to their kids, hopefully. Hopefully they have family who can help them. But those kids have obligations too. Everybody has obligations. All of us, I don't care how much money you make, all of us don't have enough money to all of a sudden pay $2,000, $4,000, $6,000. And in a skilled nursing home is $10,000 a month. And really, it can be much more. It can be $15,000 a month.
Right.
So I help families pay for all of those things. But it's really a case-by-case situation. Because what works for one family doesn't work for another. And what makes sense for a person in one health condition may not make sense for their next door neighbor who has similar but different circumstances. So, as you know, I sit down with the family and talk to them about things, look at their financial situation, their health situation, try to, with my crystal ball, which I don't have, I try to see into the future and what makes the most sense for them.
Now, we were talking before we started this interview about, I asked you if Warren Buffett could actually apply and receive Medicaid if he had all the right financial and legal instruments. And you brought in the downside to trying that. So why don't you explain a little bit about that? Because I know people do try.
Right. I've definitely had people come to me who have millions of dollars, and they call me. Well, they're used, these people might be very familiar with using attorneys for everything, right? Or professionals. So if Warren Buffett came to me, I would tell him, look, I think you have some other planning mechanisms in place. You have some other financial mechanisms in place. You don't need to use Medicaid. But with that in mind, many times people with what they think is plenty of money turn out to not have enough money because they outlive their money. They're rooting against themselves or their loved one because they're running out of money. So really what I tell people, yes, I can qualify lots of people who don't think they could be qualified. Sometimes it's not worth it because there could be estate planning issues that they've already dealt with that this would upset. There could be tax issues. There could be family issues. And I touch on all of that when I talk to a family. And a lot of times we just say it's not right now at this moment. Might become a better opportunity down the road. But Warren Buffett, I'm pretty confident, does not need me. So we'll leave it at that. I'd like to talk to him about some other issues,
but not Medicaid.
no, I think he can do without
And
Medicaid.
you know, when we look out over the population, and when people are listening to us talk about this particular issue, who should call you? I mean,
Right. So what generally happens is an adult child of an elderly person calls me because he's just spoken to some doctors or some professionals at the hospital about that their loved one needs home health aides or they need skilled nursing.
mhm.
And they're being told, okay, go ahead, put your dad into a rehab center so he can fix his hip. And it's after a month or so, you're going to have to start private paying, and that's going to be $10,000 or $15,000. And child of this elderly person, I'm sure you've got an extra $15,000 a month to just hand over to a skilled nursing facility. So hopefully somebody along those lines will say, but there's some people you can talk to. You can speak to Frances. You can speak to Bellinson. You can speak to an attorney who does elder law, Medicaid planning, estate planning, some case managers, care managers, something, social workers, somewhere there's other people to talk to who can help you get over this very, very stressful time. I tell people that I'm a lawyer, but I feel like half of my work that I do is I'm a therapist
Right.
for families because they're panicked when they call. And I know when I discovered what the VA could do for my dad, we were panicked too.
Yeah.
Our family was panicked too. We're like, what are we going to do? Are we going to move in? Is he going to move in with us? Is that what's going to happen? And, of course, I knew that my dad specifically had told me my whole life that he did not want to do that.
Right.
And I didn't. So it's one of those tough moments. That's that moment when you're hearing this bad news about your elderly parent or grandparent is when you need to call somebody.
Right.
Don't do what you've been told your cousin did, blah, blah, blah. You can do this mechanism and that. I've had so many families come to me who said, when they finally sat down and spoke to me, I wish I spoke to you 3 years ago.
Right.
Because we've done all these horrible things in 3 years, wasted all this money or missed all these opportunities.
Well,
Frances.
I do know that. And I also find that a lot of people hear this or hear that, yet they don't check it out. Like even yesterday, I was talking to someone who would qualify. I said to her, right now, I think you're fine. She's in her 70s, but like 71. I said, well, I think you're fine right now. I said, but often we outlive our money. And that's when your husband's service is going to come into play, because you never know, you might qualify. But she had already decided, because her husband was an officer and blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, I would never qualify for that. And it's like, well, no, you'd be surprised at what you would qualify for.
Right.
I mean, and truthfully, I get angry with the Veterans Administration for not telling their vets about vets aid and attendance. But once you qualify for it, they're very good about getting it to you. I mean, if you have to appeal for a little bit more because something more happened, they're happy to listen. I mean, it's just the tough part is getting heard by them, and the fact that so many of us are uneducated. Like you learned from the hospital. I learned when I was looking at assisted living facilities for my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing. When you were discussing, your dad had always said, I don't want to live with you. I don't want to live with you. I don't want to live with you. And that's, I think that generation, the silent generation and the greatest generation, sort of the World War II and Vietnam folks, I mean, they were kind of raised that, you don't want to depend on your children,
Right.
which is so silly. I mean, it's an honor. I mean, for me, it was an honor to, I would tell my parents. In fact, your parents came about because I couldn't believe anyone could get through elderhood without a lawyer. I mean, if I hadn't been a lawyer, I have no idea what would have happened.
Yeah,
to mom and dad.
you definitely need an advocate, whether it's a lawyer or a care manager or just somebody with you when you speak with the doctors, when you speak with the insurance company, all those things.
Right.
You need an advocate. I know that the best indicator of how somebody is going to come through a crisis is whether they have an advocate in their family, or a paid advocate or whatever it is. It's just, you got to have somebody with you because you're concerned about your health. That's what you're listening for. But there's other things that are going on in all of those conversations, and having it's kind of like the football player who's negotiating. He's probably really smart and he knows he wants to be shown the money, but he needs that agent there. That's
Right.
where they make the difference. So that's kind of where we are.
Yes.
For them, or just have a loved one there with you. Don't go it alone. With the VA, just so you know, the VA is great. Once you've put the information in front of them,
Right.
they will turn it around well. You can have $130,000 in cash and qualify for aid in attendance.
Right.
And you can own your own home too.
Right.
And qualify.
That's what I tell
for it.
people. Most people don't know that.
No, they're
They
always
think,
afraid of that.
Same with Medicaid.
Mhm.
Oh, but I live in such a nice home. Yeah, that's fine. You can stay there.
Right.
No,
it's very rare that I've ever had somebody come to me, oh, my house is worth so many millions of dollars, I can't qualify. Well, you're right. If your house is worth millions of dollars of equity and you're the only owner, you probably are not going to qualify. But we can find you other resources. But you don't lose your home in either one of those situations. Right.
And also in Medicaid, you can have a car too,
yeah, you can,
correct?
Yeah, with VA too. You can have a car. They
with
don't
the
count
VA.
that. They don't count your normal belongings. They're not going to take your jewelry. They're not going to take, as long as you're not, if you got a whole bunch of Picassos, that's probably the type of home furnishings they would care about. But if you're like me and normal stuff, normal nice stuff, you're allowed to keep.
Yeah.
They're not touching any of that stuff.
Right. It's too hard for them.
They don't want it. That's not what they're there for. They're there to provide a level of a bottom for families that you're not going to sink below. You've had a successful life. You've done things well. You've acquired things. And now as you age and you may have outlived your money, they don't want you to be destitute.
Right.
Right. They allow us to do these mechanisms to qualify families. And it's amazing. And it's so sad. Again, it's so sad when families come to me and say, oh, we should have spoke to you 3 years ago. You would not believe what we've been going through for 3 years. And I'm like, I do believe it, because everybody should probably speak to me 6 months, a year, 3 years before they think they need to speak to me.
Right.
With all your lawyers or professionals.
Right. Except me, because I speak to Andrew first. He's always my go-to person. So I guess the other thing people here in Florida, and if anyone from New York is listening, that we have that the other 48 states don't have is spousal refusal on Medicaid.
Right. We have a couple things in Florida that are really handy for Medicaid.
It is.
Really allow us to do some great things. So that spousal refusal is when, let's say the wife is sick and the husband is well and is the person who's speaking to us, right? He's the one in the crisis, right? So his wife is sick and she's going to need a lot of services, but they may have saved some money.
Right.
And they're very concerned because they know Medicaid, oh, you can only have $2,000. We must be poor.
Right.
Well, in Florida, we can basically move the assets from husband and wife or just wife over to husband alone. And you're allowed to make spousal transfers without tax implications generally. And we can move all the assets over to the well spouse, to the husband in this case. And then the spouse can refuse just on paper.
Right.
refuse to take care of his wife. And then that his wife, with very little assets now remaining in her name, can qualify for Medicaid.
Right.
So that's spousal refusal. It's a lot of times people they grab their heart when I tell them.
Well, and I think it's because we've been raised, or you take those wedding vows, and were I to take them again, I'd probably take this part out. But in sickness and in health. I mean, in health, everything's great, right? It's that whole sickness thing. But when I first heard about spousal refusal, I was like, so many of your clients, I'm like, how can they do that? That poor woman, blah, blah, blah. But the truth of the matter is, it can also be reversed. And that other spouse is also going to need the money as they get older.
Right. I think that's really the situation. It's like husband and wife, one spouse is now sick. We'll say in this case, the husband is sick.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be wrong about that. So the husband is sick. But let's say the husband is sick and 80 years old and his wife is 70 and quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to spend every last penny of the family's money on the sick husband?
Correct.
And then leave the well wife to then fend for herself with no assets for many, many years? Because hopefully she's going to live till she's 100.
Right.
So as a society, we don't want to do that.
No.
So that's why spousal refusal is there, so that we don't completely impoverish the wife or cause people to get divorces or anything like that.
Yeah, because often in other states, that's what they have to do. They actually have to divorce the person so that they can put them into a facility, even though they're taking care of them.
Right. So that's really not what we want to do as a society.
No, I agree.
And I'm glad that we have this mechanism in Florida. And then we have another mechanism where we can have the family members, in a way, be paid for taking care of their loved one.
That's right.
And that's another great mechanism. I use it regularly, and there's pros and cons to everything. So I discuss the pros and cons with the family when
Why
this
don't
is
you
our
talk
option.
a little bit about that? Because most people don't know. I know just because we work together, I know that I can tell them, no, we can put together a plan for you, be it under Vets Aid and Attendance or Medicaid, where you're paid to be part of the help. Why don't you just...
So where I use this most often is in the planning stage, where let's say a family has $100,000 left. And they know that with Medicaid, you can't have anything, right? But there's a mechanism that allows us to move that $100,000 from the applicant, from the elderly person who needs home health aides, let's say, can move it to their adult child and base it on all the care and love and things they do for their dad every single day anyways, right? And we just monetize it. And as long as it's done correctly, Medicaid is comfortable with it. And again, this is one of those things that we show Medicaid precisely what we did. I show them a calculation down to the penny on a daily basis of how this works and why it's appropriate for this family. And it's a great mechanism. And the family members who live in New York, who are calling me on the phone, who are part of this process, go crazy, because in New York it's not allowed. And they've spoken to their cousin who's a lawyer who says that cannot be true. That must be a fraudulent transfer. Again, if it's done right, we're not committing fraud because we're showing them everything we're doing.
Right.
And it's all based in fact. And look, we just do what we're told we can do for the families, and we avail ourselves of each opportunity.
Well, and a lot of children do, in fact. I mean, look, I tell the stories about the kids who are not so nice to their parents, but the majority of children do honor and love their parents and are the perfect person to take care of them and be paid for it. In fact, when we qualified my father for Medicaid aid and attendance, the first year, he lived in the basement apartment of my brother.
Mhm.
And so my brother was the one who was paid. And through that money, he hired someone to be with dad. And I mean, so there, it is a good thing once you understand what's being done here.
Right. I think there's a lot of different factors at play with the planning and the execution of the of presenting the care to the elderly family member.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the family member is actually giving the care, but most often that's not the case.
That's
it's more
not the
along
case.
the lines they bring in a home health worker, or this helps the family pay for an assisted living facility
Right.
or a skilled nursing facility. So this money that's being set aside or that's being provided for the vets does not mean that you as the adult child have to be there taking care of your mom every single day.
Right.
No, you can have professionals brought in. You can have home health workers, or you can have them living at an assisted living facility.
Mm-hmm.
And this money can be used to help defray the costs.
Right.
And that's the idea. There are ways where they can be paid directly from Medicaid to take care of their loved one in their own home, a situation like that. But I haven't had too many clients who've actually done that. Most of my clients are using us to help their parents get the most benefits that are as many benefits that are out there
as possible. Right.
Yeah. So.
And before you did Medicaid, what did you do? What kind of law did you practice?
So I did asset protection and bankruptcy, consumer bankruptcy work for families.
A lot of it is similar.
A lot of it is similar. A lot of the techniques are similar. A lot of what I'm helping families get through is similar. And in fact, I didn't really recognize it, but the way this issue first came to me was I had a number of clients who told me the reason why they were bankrupt or had a lot of debts was because they stopped working for a year to take care of their parent or their grandmother or aunt. And because I said to one family in particular, she was a registered nurse and worked at Jackson and made $120,000 a year.
Wow.
And I'm like, how can you have run up so much money? And she told me this story. And I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. Why doesn't Medicare pay for all of that? I thought Medicare paid for it. And so does everybody else.
Yeah.
It does not take care of the
long-term care.
It takes care of the medical side. Medicare does, but it does not take care of the long-term care. The home health aides that are required to keep you healthy while you get your doctor's appointments that are being paid for by Medicare are not covered by Medicare.
Right.
And that shocked me. It shocked me professionally when I was helping people in bankruptcy, and every day now when I help families, it shocks me over and over. I just keep rolling my eyes and shaking my head because it really should be covering it. There should be a more smooth, natural mechanism for families, but there isn't. And we live where we live and we are where we are, and we have to deal with it.
Well, it's so funny because I was at a conference with Donna Shalala when she was president of University of Miami, and she said exactly what you said. Medicare did not go far enough. But if you look at the history of Medicare, it had started out as national health care, and they under President Truman, actually. And it was Truman, Kennedy, it was LBJ who finally, President Johnson, who finally got it passed. Because no one wanted that national health care, which would have taken care of people. And the other thing people do is they get Medicare and Medicaid mixed up. I mean, Medicare is the present you get at the age of 65, period. And you have to be 65 and a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. Medicaid is what you get because you qualify for it, although you do have to be a green card holder or a U.S. citizen.
Right.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything you need to know about Medicaid, but we're afraid to ask, or vets aid in attendance, and we're afraid to
Well, there's
ask.
plenty more to know about it.
But that's why you're going to call Andrew.
But that's all you want to know is that it's available, and you should speak to somebody, be it me, somebody else, Frances. But
If you call me, I just bring in Andrew.
Yeah. But
so
good point.
whichever one is fine.
But definitely, if you have some of these issues, if things like this are coming up in your family, speak to somebody. Don't go it alone.
Don't do it alone. Oh my gosh, the stress is enormous. Enormous. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And
thanks for inviting me.
And you all know who I am, Frances Reaves, and I'm here at Miami Community Newspapers. Thank you very much, Miami Community Newspapers, for hosting me monthly for this show. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.